Due to the time limit, I'm going to be asking for very sharp, precise answers for the following questions for Ms. McCuaig-Johnston. Do you have an advanced degree in technology and cybersecurity? Yes or no?
No, but I have spent
like I said,
37 years
I need
in
to get short answers,
business.
please.
Okay.
The other one is you belong to the China Strategic Risk Institute. So does this institute specifically look for risk when there isn't one? Yes or no?
No.
So why is it a risk institute?
Because it analyzes risks that are obviously there.
Thank you. So the last question then is, you claim about forced labor in Shenzhen. Have you witnessed this yourself? Have you been there ever?
I've been to China many times.
Have you witnessed
since
forced labor in Shenzhen?
1979? No.
Have you witnessed forced, just a short answer. Have you witnessed forced labor in Shenzhen? Yes or no? So did you get that
I
from
work closely
hearsay?
with Human Rights Watch, where researchers did witness it.
So thank you.
We are here once again to continue our conversation on electric vehicles.
Study on electric vehicles. So we've got two witnesses with us here in person in the first round, and then we'll have two witnesses with us in the second. Appearing today as an individual, a visiting lecturer from the Department of Economics at McGill University, Julian Karagesian, and a senior fellow from the University of Ottawa. Joining us today is Margaret McCuaig-Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been a supporter of EVs for many years. At Industry Canada in 1995, I and my team introduced technology roadmaps to Canada jointly with industry leaders, and one of the first was in automotive technologies. In 2008, as ADM of Energy Technologies at NRCan, I initiated the technology roadmap for electric vehicles. I wanted Canadian companies and researchers to have a major role in the sector. This will be significantly aided by Canada's automotive strategy and Ontario government initiatives. However, I have a major concern about the introduction of Chinese EVs into the sector. First, our auto sector is under major stress with the imposition of U.S. tariffs in the heavily integrated North American market. This is not a good time for cheap imports to compete with cars our own workers make. In Brazil and Hungary, Chinese cars assembled from kits, never from local suppliers, are made in heavily roboticized factories, so they aren't the same number of jobs that our own factories have. Second, dozens of parts in each Chinese EV are made with aluminum from Uyghur forced labor. A 2024 report from Human Rights Watch says this includes Chinese brands, but also Western vehicles, including Teslas, Toyotas, Volkswagen, and GM cars made in China. Bauxite is shipped thousands of miles to Xinjiang to be processed into aluminum by free-cost Uyghur forced labor, and then shipped from there to car and parts companies. It's illegal to import products into Canada made in whole or in part with forced labor. But the staff positions at ESDC and GAC related to forced labor are being wound up in the cuts, except for a comms function. And it is not a priority in GAC's departmental plan for 2026-27. Also, a key customs notice on forced labor has disappeared from the government website, and the new notice regarding Chinese EV firms lists what companies must comply with, but makes no mention of forced labor. Also, new legislation and an agency promised just last year seem to no longer be proceeding. Does this government no longer care about forced labor? The U.S. Trade Representative recently launched a Section 301 investigation of Canada's implementation of forced labor policies under CUSMA, with up to 25% tariffs resulting across the board if those efforts are inadequate. This is not the time to be dropping the ball on forced labor. Third, there is a risk of the Baidu software in Chinese EVs, including Western vehicles made there. It sends data from the cameras, microphones, and GPS back to China. Their national intelligence law requires companies to spy if requested. Cars with this software are regularly updated remotely from China. A U.S. Department of Energy report released last year on the integration of EVs with the electricity grid says that a synchronized surge via charging vehicles could cause brownouts and market disruptions. This Baidu software should be stripped out when the cars arrive and replaced by BlackBerry's QNX used in North American cars. If not, Beijing will have very detailed data on all the streets and buildings in Canada, as well as passengers' personal information. Of course, all military CSIS, CSEC, RCMP, and even departmental locations should not permit Chinese vehicles. Fourth, in Europe, they saw that Chinese vehicles were being priced 10 to 15% below local competition, just enough to make the sale. So this year, they are requiring Chinese companies to negotiate comparable prices. But here in Canada, we're going in the other direction, requiring 50% of the vehicles to be below $35,000. The government has said it wants Chinese auto joint ventures here. Already, BYD has said they won't do that. They want to assemble independently. If we did have joint ventures, they should be more than 60% Western-owned with Canadian management, workers, and suppliers, especially in aluminum and steel, QNX software, and technology transfer to the Western firm. And we have to be prepared to walk away from the table if they do not agree. Thank you.
Mr. Ma, the floor is yours for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the witnesses being here. Due to the time limit, I'm going to be asking for very sharp, precise answers for the following questions for Ms. McCuaig-Johnston. Do you have an advanced degree in technology and cybersecurity? Yes or no?
No, but
Thank you.
I have spent
like I said,
37 years
I
in
need
that
to get short answers,
business.
please.
Okay.
The other one is you belong to the China Strategic Risk Institute. So does this institute specifically look for risk when there isn't one? Yes or no?
No,
So why is it a risk institute?
because it analyzes risks that are obviously there.
Thank you. So the last question then is, you claim about forced labor in Shenzhen. Have you witnessed this yourself? Have you been there ever?
I've been to
Sorry.
China many times.
Have you witnessed
Since
forced labor in Shenzhen?
1979.
Have you
No.
witnessed forced, just a short answer. Have you witnessed forced labor in Shenzhen? Yes or no? So did you get that
I
from
work closely with
hearsay?
Human Rights Watch, where researchers
Okay.
did witness it.
So thank you.
Ms. McCuaig-Johnston, I want to apologize for the member on the other side of the table.
Point
who
of
was
order.
Very
Chair
rude
Carr?
to you.
Okay, colleagues, just one moment. I sense we've got a little bit of tension brewing. I have a point of order that I'm going to address. And then, Ms. Borelli, I've paused the clock so you won't lose time on the matter. Madame O'Rourke on a point of order.
Thank you, Chair Carr. So we've had frequently the Vice Chair use a similar line and tone in questioning, and so there's nothing untoward in terms of my colleagues' interaction.
Okay, thank you, Madame O'Rourke. Not a point of order that that I see in there. Madame Borelli, you're of course free to use your time as Mr. Ma on a point of order.
Well, I obviously in public being accused, and I like an apology from the member from the other side.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ma. That would not be a point of order, and I don't.
Give me evidence that any violation that requires an apology for me on my behalf.
So, Mr. Ma, I think we're kind of getting into a little bit of debate at the moment. Ms. Borelli, I might ask, just for the sake of allowing us to get back to our line of questioning, that we focus, if possible, on the substantive content and nature of the discussion before us. So with that, I'm going to return the floor to you with 4 minutes and 52 seconds remaining of your 5 minutes.
Well, I'll continue with my apology for the behavior of the member across the aisle. You're giving very good testimony.
Point of order. I did not ask you to represent me to apologize, so thank you.
Okay. So, colleagues, I think it's obvious that there is some disagreement about the language being used. I think we can move past this. We've got two witnesses before us who are offering some insight into an important study that we asked for. And I would suggest that instead of focusing on the internal dynamics between members, we direct our questions to the witnesses before us in an attempt to gain some further insight into the matters before us. Ms. Borelli, I'll turn the floor back to you.
Thank you, Chair.
We saw Liberal members of Parliament, Michael Maw, Dominic O'Rourke, discrediting a witness to defend the human rights abuses of China against the Uyghur people, and also...
Mr. Falk, I'm just going to have to address this point of order. I'll pause the clock. Madame O'Rourke?
I in no way discredited the witness that was before us.
No,
I did ask her
you defended
to keep her answers
Mr. Falk,
short.
1 second. Yeah.
But I in no way discredited the witness.
Okay.
And I pointed out simply that this line of questioning and that approach has been used in this committee frequently.
Okay. Thank you, Madame O'Rourke. Mr. Ma?
Yes, I object that my name is being now broadcast in this fashion in being called. Like, you could call me as member of the opposite, the other side, but you are naming people, and that is not the rules we have engagement here.
Okay, colleagues.
Well, then Mr. Falk,
Okay, colleagues,
I take exception to what
Mr.
you're
Ma,
saying.
I'm going to take the floor back now. Okay. I know where this is all going. So we have a decision point before us. We can all go back and look at the testimony from the previous hour to determine what we believe can be taken from that. We can use the time that we have remaining, which is about 30 minutes, to engage in a very interesting conversation about EV policy in this country from two experts, or we can use the time to litigate the previous hour that was before us. Members certainly have the prerogative to determine what it is they want to do. I just want to encourage us to bring the temperature down where possible, and I hope that we will be able to utilize the expertise of the two people before us to contribute to the report that we will ultimately be presenting to the House of Commons on this important subject matter. With that, Mr. Falk, I'm going to return the floor to you. I will just make one note, colleagues, which is that as we engage in points of order and other things that encourage discussion outside of the realm of soliciting answers from the experts here, it does take away from some of the time that we have allotted to us, and I just want all members to be aware. If I do have to reduce time, I'll do so judiciously. It will be from all sides around the table, but just a quick note to draw attention to that. Mr. Falk, I paused the clock at 4:48. You had 6 minutes, so that time is remaining for you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yep. It was just something I had never experienced here in Parliament before, that a Canadian politician would be defending China's human rights abuses.
I'm going to take this opportunity to move the following motion: that the committee unequivocally condemn forced labor practices in China. And I would like to remind this committee that it was first a Liberal government that first acknowledged the Uyghur forced labor camps and the human rights abuses. It's been widely recognized by the United Nations and other human rights groups. I'd also like to point out that it was in Beijing that detained two Michaels for over 1,000 days. It's because of, not the Chinese people, of course, but because of the government in China, that Huawei was banned here in Canada, that TikTok has been removed from government devices. These are serious threats and serious issues facing our country, and we as a party, or we as a collective here at this committee, need to come together and condemn this. I would also like to point out that there's a record of IP leakage and IP theft. There's a record of using their economy as geopolitical leverage. So I'd like to move this following motion, because it's unclear here if Mr. Ma has deviated from the Liberal Party's longstanding opposition to Chinese enslavement and human rights abuses, or if he's soft-launching the
Point of
Liberal
order,
Party's
Mr.
new
Chair.
position
Mr.
on
Guglielmin,
these
I have
issues.
to respond to a point of order, so
Sorry.
you'll maintain the floor after I deal with this.
I'm
Yes,
just,
Mr.
a
Bartese.
motion's been moved, but I'm not sure if we're moving directly into debate on the motion or what's happening exactly.
My read of the situation is Mr. Guglielmin is not concluded moving the motion, and that these are his remarks in relation to moving the motion. So once he's made it clear that the motion has been, I haven't seen or heard the motion. So Mr. Guglielmin, I imagine you're getting there. I might encourage you to move on with the preamble as soon as you can and get to the substance of the motion itself, so that I can, along with committee members, first review it and determine its substance, and then we can decide where we go from here. The floor is yours, Mr. Guglielmin.
Well, I'll just go back to the conclusion of my little preamble, as you said. So it's just unclear if MP Ma's remarks are at odds with the Liberal Party's position and the government's position, or if he's soft-launching for the Prime Minister's new position on the Communist Party of China and their sort of permissive view on enslavement and the potential national security risk to our country. So I did state the motion up front, and I'll state it again, and that is that the committee unequivocally condemn forced labor practices in China. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So what I'm going to do here is suspend briefly so that there's an opportunity for us to have that circulated. Sometimes it's helpful for there to be a couple of minutes for members to think about how they want to address a motion that's being table dropped. So I'm going to suspend very briefly, make sure we get the proper wording, and we will come back momentarily.
We'll require translation of the motion as well.
Yeah, I just feel this motion is really important. So I've lived in China for a couple of years, and as a Canadian parliamentarian, I was appalled and disturbed when it seemed very much like a parliamentarian across the way was defending China when it's our job to defend this national security of our country, Canada. So the motion is very short and very clear that we unequivocally condemn certain practices, and I would expect that this committee would find it easy to do that and unanimously vote to condemn those practices. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, we'll be supporting this motion so that we can move on to return to the witnesses and clear the record. If there was any doubt, I didn't see any doubt in the testimony of the minister and the line of questioning from the first hour that would cause any doubt on this question. And we want to move on and also make sure that we focus on the things that are of concern to this committee.
Thank you for that, Mr. Bartese. Mr. Ma?
Mr. Chair, since my name was being mentioned in this background of the motion, I'd like to set the record straight that the question with the witness was whether she had witnessed forced labor in Shenzhen that she had claimed. I had made no assertion of either support or deny it. I just asked whether she had witnessed it. And so that's the period. That was the line of question. We asked many times with different witnesses whether they have seen certain things that they claim. And that's very legitimate questions. And if the Conservatives want to turn that into a political situation, then, you know, the shame is on your side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ma. Mr. Guglielmin, you do have the floor. I will just note, for the sake of what happens next, Mr. Bartese seems to have indicated support from the Liberal side. I presume that the Conservatives are supportive of this, as they are the movers of the motion, and Mr. Sainte-Marie a indiqué l'appui de le côté du Bloc. Mr. Guglielmin, I will turn the floor over to you. I know there's probably an appetite for perhaps one or two more pieces of commentary, but we've quite clearly publicly established support for the motion, and I would encourage us to get to a vote quickly, given that we know the positions of the parties, as it will allow us to re-engage with our witnesses who are here today. Mr. Guglielmin, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I will just say it's glad to see that we're having unanimous consent to support this motion because, frankly, during the testimony, the line of questioning was to discredit the witnesses, basically the witness's authority. And the way that you went after her in that line of questioning was in defense of the fact that, hey, have you actually ever seen this? Meaning there is no slave labor in China. But I'm glad you
and colleagues, Mr. Ma,
we're glad to hear on this.
So, Mr. Guglielmin, I'm going to pause you too. Mr. Ma, the floor is currently mine. From my perspective here, colleagues, the record has been set straight. There are differences of opinion, as per usual, in this place, as to the meaning and construction of a way something was articulated. Let's just agree to disagree. Mr. Mao, I feel you've had the opportunity to set the record straight. Mr. Guglielmin, I feel you've made your point. I'm going to afford you the opportunity to continue making that point because the floor is yours, but I hope you'll do so very briefly, because it's very clear to me as chair right now that we have unanimous consent to support the motion. The debate that we're having right now, therefore, is on the motion. There is no more disagreement as to whether or not there'll be support for the motion. The disagreement is on whether or not the motion was necessary. To me, this is now turning into a little bit of a waste of our time, and I think that we have to return to the testimony of witnesses who have availed themselves to us today. Mr. Guglielmin, the floor is yours, but I would ask that you please just take the comments I've made into consideration. I'll return the floor to you.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that there's unanimous consent in supporting the condemnation of slave labor in China, because the number one responsibility and role of a member of the federal Canadian Parliament is to defend the interests of the Canadian people. Thank you.
Ms. Kirkland?
Yes. I think I would like to add an amendment to the motion. And the amendment would be this, and that the committee condemn the comments made by the member of Markham Unionville.
Okay. I'm going to just, I'm just going to discuss this for a moment with the clerk just to make sure, I understand the framing around this correctly. And then we'll come back to it. I'm going to just suspend. Madame Kirkland, go ahead. Was there anything else you wanted to add? Or perhaps for the record, you can just reread the sub-amendment that you're proposing.
Absolutely. And to add this.
Sorry, amendment, not sub-amendment.
The amendment,
Apologies.
excuse me.
Apologies.
And this is it exactly. And that the committee condemn the comments made by the member for Markham Unionville.
We have no evidence that has been brought forward by anyone in this committee to date that suggests that the work of my colleague over here, Mr. Ma, and what he said has in any way violated standards such that the extraordinarily high bar that it should take, that any committee, that any deliberative body should take to condemn one of its own applies here. We are nowhere near that bar. I would invite my colleagues across to show precedent, past evidence, specific examples where a committee has condemned one of its own members after comments that were made that were in the Hansard, that are available in Hansard, where frankly, and again, we as parliamentarians also enjoy the benefit of privilege, parliamentary privilege. I would invite them to show one example where a committee in this parliament has done this.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Falk.
Has passed a motion condemning one of its own members.
As noted, I'm in favor of the motion. Like all members of the committee, in order to gain a bit of time so we could ask questions of the witnesses. I did not ask any questions, but given that they're gone now I'm going to speak to the amendment. From my point of view, it is not the role of a committee to condemn what was said by one of its members. I think the strength of a democracy is the freedom of speech and to express opinions that are not unanimously supported, and that everyone has the right to speak their mind, and then we can debate it afterwards. Mr. Bardizzi was saying that for a year now, he's been in the House and at committee here, and he spoke to his experience. Well, I've been here for just over 10 years, and I would say, in a partisan manner, we're here to represent our constituents, and our parties. And for the most part, what I hear in the House and in committees, I would be against it. But I understand that can change. However, I don't think the role of a committee is to condemn what's been said by one of its members. And I think democracy requires freedom of speech and of opinions that are not unanimously supported, and that's why I would turn down this amendment. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Samari.
Bit of a status check here for us. I do have Ms. Kirkland. I believe you'd raised your hand with a desire to speak to this amendment. So what we now have is, prior to the amendment, we had unanimous consent on adoption of the motion put forward by Mr. Guglielmin. We then had an amendment put forward to that motion by Madame Kirkland, which is what we've been debating over the course of the past several minutes. I suspect, based on what I'm hearing, that members from the Liberal side will oppose the amendment, although I'll look for some clarity from them. Monsieur Saint-Marie from the Bloc has indicated that he will oppose the amendment. If a vote were to occur, we know what the result is. However, as you know, colleagues, I can't call a vote until debate has collapsed on the matter. So at this point, I would encourage us to think about where we want to go from here. We know what the end result is going to be unless there is some line of questioning that persuades members around the table to change their mind. It's, of course, the prerogative of members to try to do that. But after I provide the floor to Madame Kirkland, I will encourage us to think about allowing this to go to a vote, given that we know what the outcome of that vote is going to be. Madame Kirkland, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate the fact that you gave me the floor. I just since it was in question why the amendment came forward, I just wanted to clarify that before we go to a vote. So the amendment I decided to add was added due to the opposition we seem to have from my colleague Mr. Ma across the way to the initial motion made by Mr. Guglielmin. And I believe that made me feel like the member across the way was defending again the fact that he had defended China's record, it seemed to be, in the way that he was questioning our witness. So for clarity, yeah, that is why I added the amendment. We could have moved a lot quicker had we not had that added. So thank you, sir.
Okay. Seeing no further, okay, Mr. Ma?
Well, thank you, Ms. Kirtland, for your comment, and seems like you're projecting a personal perspective and interpretation, and same as Mr. Falk and Borelli. So, we are here to represent Canadians, and you are injecting your personal views, and you're not allowing me to project my comments. And so if you look back at the records, it was a question and the witness answered. There was no projected comment one way or another. So if you want to spin this any way you want, I guess you will do it anyway. But letting the record sit straight, that's what the questions and line of questions was. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ma. Seeing no further speakers, I'm going to call the amendment to a vote. Madam Clerk, on this one, I think I'll get you to call the vote.
Sure. On the amendment of Ms. Kirkland, Mr. Bardizzi.
Against.
Mr. Baines.
No.
Mr. Ma.
No.
Ms. O'Rourke.
Against.
Ms. Borelli. For. Ms. Kirkland.
For.
Mr. Falk.
In favor.
Mr. Guglielmin.
In favor.
Mr. Saint-Marie.
Contre.
Against.
Yeas pour 4, nays contre 5.
Okay, so colleagues, the amendment has been defeated. We're now back to the main motion. We have already indicated unanimous consent for that motion.
And I'd like to move a very simple, very brief amendment to the motion to strike the words in China and replace it with globally, en français, au niveau mondial.